She basically, and it was so bizarre to watch some of the videos because
Yeah.
she told them that she was having these episodes where the devil was taking over her body. And it almost was like she was like having a seizure or something. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like horror movies where they do like an exorcism, but it was like
Yeah.
that she
Yeah.
would like was taken over. And they totally bought into it. They were like, this is real.
Welcome to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends, the podcast where we explore life, career, relationships, and pop culture through a Christian conservative perspective. Each episode, we dive into deep topics that matter most to us women, from navigating your career with grace and confidence to watering meaningful relationships grounded in faith. We're here to empower you to embrace your femininity and stand firm in your beliefs. We'll also tackle the latest in pop culture, discussing how they align or clash with our values. Let's uncover the truth and encourage each other to live boldly and authentically. So whether you're at home or on your commute, get ready for some fabulous conversations. Grab your teacup, pour yourself some tea. Come on, girlies, we're changing culture. The views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not reflect our employers. Enjoy! Hello, everyone. You are listening to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory.
And I'm Abby.
And we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am so excited. We have not done a true crime episode in probably a year at this point.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about this episode. It is something that's kind of been on the news a lot, and there's a documentary about it, so it'll be really good, I think, for us to discuss it. And we're going to start this new thing. Also, if you have I went to say this earlier. If you have stories that you want us to cover, because one thing I want to say before we get really into this particular story is that we both want to make sure we're being ethical true crime consumers, I guess you could say. And we want to do like missing people. We want to have like real conversation. We don't want to be just those girls that are kind of like giggling through the whole time and like, trying to be like, it's not necessarily entertainment. It is knowledgeable. We're learning something. If you guys have ideas for any cases you want us to cover, let us know. Hello, those are the girls at gmail.com. You can email it to me there. Yes, so we're also, as you guys know, we used to do life lessons, and we're going to continue that. But now what we're going to do is Abby's going to give us a law fact. Each episode, we'll start the episode with a law fact. For those who do not know, Abby is a lawyer. So that's another reason why this is so good, is because she has a lot of this knowledge. She can talk to us a little bit more from a different perspective. And I'm just a consumer, and I did a year and a half in getting my master's in law, which is not the same, but I do know a thing or two. Anyway, so let's get started. You're going to be, Abby, tell us a law fact first, and then you can just get us started.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I can just say what case we're going to be doing, but we're going to be talking about Ruby Franke. And the law that I chose for my sort of law fact for the day is something that was passed sort of in response to her case. Utah just passed what's called House Bill 322. It was just passed last month. Basically, what it says is that it requires online content creators who make over $150,000 annually from content featuring children to set aside at least 15% of their earnings into a trust fund for the children. Additionally, it requires that once the children turn 18, they're able to request that any content they're featured in can be deleted or edited.
Oh, so that's good.
Kind of the goal of the law is just to give these children a little more control over how they're portrayed online. I don't know if I think it's a perfect law, because I guess, I don't know, it's tough because these kids, a lot of them are very young that these family vloggers are featuring on their channels. Some of them are toddlers who like probably don't even know that they're being recorded and posted on the internet. It's good that once they're 18, they can sort of be like, take me down. I don't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, it's like such an interesting ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
How much say should these children have?
Yeah, and I think it will be, the whole case is essentially about family vloggers, and we can talk really quick about family vlogging in general. I personally have never been interested in vlogging at all. Like, I don't know why, I just don't find it interesting. I wish I did, because people really like vlogs, and I certainly don't find family vlogging interesting. I don't know why. Like, you would think as someone who likes all the things I like, I would find it interesting, but I just don't. But I do know of some prominent ones, you know, like the Lebrants are the ones I think of, especially because they're Christian. And what I think with family vlogging, because I think about, you know, you have a daughter and you can talk about this from your perspective, but I think when I have my kids, like, I personally don't necessarily want to be someone who's not going to show her or his face. I want to be able to, like, oh, if they do something funny, like, record it. And I think, like, the difference between that and family vlogging is, like, I guess maybe, like, one is more curated. Because I think about, like, you know, we're talking about Ruby Franke. She filmed her kids, like, getting scrapes and, like, around one of the daughters was shaving her. Like, that's too, like, what's the purpose of that? But I think that the family vlogging is just, and it's so popular. I mean, there are so many famous family vloggers. And I think, like, when we're thinking about family vlogging, like, what it is, I think it's good to, like, think about the difference between, like, family vlogging as opposed to, like, just posting your kids. Because that's something that I have thought about in listening to this case and, like, doing research on it, is like, what is the difference? And then, you know, do the kids, like, what role do the kids play in this? Because you're right, a toddler doesn't even really know what's going on. The toddler doesn't understand that the camera in their face isn't, you know, I probably thinks it's an extension of their mom. They always have a camera in their face. So they're not going to understand that. So yeah, the law isn't perfect, but it is something to think about and consider, like, where is the line? You know, posting a fun little picture of your kid doing something, I think, is a little different than, hey, now, camera, watch as my child is bleeding, she's learning to shave. Like, that's, you know, too much.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get into it too a little more in the story, but Ruby Franke was posting like very personal things about her kids, like, you know, daughter shaving her legs for the first time, talking about like puberty and like just it's hard enough being a kid at that age, and like
Right.
having it plastered on the internet for a bunch of strangers is probably even harder.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I do think that Utah passing a law like this is a good start in the right direction, because it does kind of give the kids that are involved in these family vlogging channels a little more power. And I know that Utah, for whatever reason, is a very popular hotspot for these family vloggers. A lot of them live in Utah. So
Yeah.
it's good that they're kind of setting the tone that, like, you can't just, you know, exploit your kids like this and make a bunch of money off them and leave them with nothing. So
Right.
definitely interesting.
Well, let's get into it.
All right, let's get into it. So Ruby Franke was born in 1982. She is from Utah, as I had mentioned. She got married to her husband, Kevin Franke, in the year 2000, and they lived together in a close-knit, wealthy community called Springville, Utah. They were both active members of the Church of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as the Mormon Church, as is very, very prominent in Utah. It sounds
Yeah.
like they were kind of surrounded by pretty much everyone in their community was involved with this church.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of famous, like, family vloggers are Mormons as well.
A lot of them are, yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And they all kind of like flock together. I mean, did you watch the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on
No, but I've
Hulu?
seen clips of it, and yeah, they. But I will say, like, from the clips I've seen, I don't know if Ruby Franke would have fit in that group. I feel like she
That
wouldn't.
group was a little different, I gotta
Yeah,
say. Like, I don't know, quite an odd bunch, but that's
yeah.
not what we're talking about
Anyway,
today.
yeah.
So, one thing that I found interesting from the documentary is they talked a lot with Ruby's husband, now ex-husband, spoiler alert, Kevin, and he talked about how he was like super obsessed with having a perfect Mormon wife, and that's like all he wanted. And he talked about how she had this list of her perfect man in her closet, and
Yeah,
he saw
yeah.
it and basically was like, I'm going to fit into that mold because I want this woman to marry me. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is so interesting to me.
Interesting is a good word. That was, yeah, interesting is a good word to
Mhm.
describe that. And he, like, was reminiscing, which is also, you know, we can talk about that at the end.
Totally.
He was weird to me.
I agree. I have a lot of thoughts about him, but we can get
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
I just he like from the very beginning, it sounds like he kind of put her on a pedestal, and I think that contributed a lot to kind of how things played out with this
Yeah.
family.
The dynamic of when you do that to your, like, obviously love your spouse or whatever, but, like, when you put them so much higher, like, it's going to change the dynamic of the relationship completely.
Yeah, there's definitely like some power control dynamics here going on.
Yeah.
So, as we had sort of touched on, Ruby Franke was a family vlogger on YouTube. She had a channel called Eight Passengers because they had 6 kids together that were all heavily featured on this channel. The channel started in 2015. By 2020, she had 2.5 million subscribers. They posted family content. Like I said, all of the children were featured. So was her husband. And it was like everything. She posted like 5 times a week. It was like a full-time job for her. She was making a ton of money off of it. I think they said in the documentary that they were making like over $100,000 at their best, like in a month, which is more than I make in a year.
Yeah, well, and especially in 2015, if you could go viral on YouTube and like you can get that, I mean, you were making bank like that. 2015, I feel like to 2018-ish was like prime YouTube content creators making so much money.
Yeah, I feel like it was a time where a lot of these content creators really blew up because I think YouTube was really popular and vlogging and content creation was like sort of on the rise at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why all of these people kind of got into this content creation stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. I know exactly what I do with it too, but anyway, keep going.
Right? I think we've all dreamed about it. So early on, they painted a picture of a very happy, close knit family. They were going on trips together. They were doing all this family bonding, having gender reveal parties when they had babies, all of this fun, beautiful stuff. They were adored online. Ruby was really praised for her parenting. And the kids were actually pretty into it sounds like, in the beginning. They only, in the documentary, talked to the oldest 2 because the youngest 4 are still minors, so they wanted to keep their identities private. But the 2 who are over the age of 18, they interviewed and they agreed to do it and everything. And it sounds like they liked it. They thought it was fun to be on camera. They thought like being popular was cool.
Yeah.
The oldest son, Chad, said he like got a lot of attention from girls.
Yeah.
It was like a cool thing for them. But things kind of started to change as they got older, and the page sort of started to take a darker turn. So I'm going to pause that for a second and shift to sort of like a different part of the story, which is Ruby getting involved with a woman named Jodie Hildebrandt. Jodie was a local therapist. She was licensed at one point, but did end up losing her license due to violating patient confidentiality. She ran this women's group that Ruby got involved with. And I'll be straight up, it was sort of cult-like. They were kind of very curated in what they taught. And a lot of it was kind of a little man-hating. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I definitely agree with that. And it was implied, I don't know if we'll get there, but there were some things that were implied in the documentary about the man-hating and Jodie and Ruby being close and all that other stuff too.
Yes.
Very interesting, yeah.
Very layered. She also was involved in the Church of Latter-day Saints, as was pretty much everyone in their sort of circle.
Yeah.
And she got really, really into this women's group. And I think this is kind of where she started to like pivot.
Yes.
Because Jodie had some pretty interesting teachings. I think she really kind of pushed the idea that like the devil was working through all of us and that we had to sort of drive out the devil through punishment, sometimes physical punishment.
Yeah.
And
that's not very biblical.
It didn't make any sense to me personally.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So, and I'll talk about it in my life lesson. You know, when people, you know, you have the Bible, we're Christian, so I'll say the Bible. You have your Bible, this is what the Bible says, and people start kind of like adding to it, that's when things can get a little icky. And I think from, you know, watching some of the things that Jodie was saying, like, there's all this stuff in this and sometimes you have to beat it out. Or like, I listened to part of another documentary where this niece was talking about some of the things that Jodie made her do. And it's just all this stuff. It just isn't biblical. And like, she really, I mean, she turned up the man-hating. It was actually listening to what the husband's name is Kevin, right? Kevin? Yeah, listening to what Kevin was saying and some of the other men whose wives were part of it, it's actually like very concerning because, you know, obviously men and women are different. And I actually do think it's okay for women to have their own space and their own time. but you can't, men are not inherently evil. And that was the vibe I was getting, I think. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The vibe I was getting is like she was saying men are inherently evil and we have to do things to make them not evil as their spouse. And it's like, that's not in scripture. Where are you getting this, ma'am? Because she was saying that
It
she
sort
was
of came from a place of like female empowerment, kind of like we need to take control of our household. Like we as women need to keep our men in line, and that way
yeah.
we'll keep the devil out, and all of that kind of stuff was sort of the vibe I was getting.
Yeah.
But she also had a men's group too that Ruby's husband Kevin joined at Ruby's request, of course, because
Yeah.
she and Jodie were like tight at this point. And Kevin even said that in the beginning, he was like the model man of that group. She would like compliment him and like kind of put him on a pedestal and tell all the other men, like, you guys should be more like Kevin. And he liked it. I mean,
Of
obviously,
course.
like, they're all bad and he's good. Yeah, but then it's sort of like transitioned into this thing where she was like beating him down too, kind of in this men's group. And it sounded like he was a little conflicted about it for a bit, but his wife really wanted him to do it. And he like really was convinced that like this was what was best for them.
Yeah.
But I think that this was like a manipulation tactic that Jodie was using to kind of like drive a wedge in their marriage.
100%, which is really weird. Like, the whole thing is just so odd to me that she wanted to be so involved in their life. It was weird.
It totally weird. She was working with the oldest son too, I know, because he was like having some behavioral issues. I mean, he was a teenager, and basically he was told by his parents that he was going to start working with Jodie, that she was a therapist and she was going to help him and to just listen to her and do what she says. And he even said that he loved Jodie. Like he enjoyed talking to her, like having her as a therapist. And like she was I think she was charismatic and inviting, as many of these, sort of cultish leaders are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just so interesting to me how she got through to these people and like planted her crazy ideas in their head when
Yeah.
it was a seemingly pretty normal family.
Yeah.
But at one point, Jodie wound up moving into the home with Ruby and Kevin and all of their kids.
And this is when, for me, this is when everything like in the documentary went, okay, now we are ventured way too far. Why is this random therapist moving into your home? That was so crazy.
I know, like, I don't know, that was just red flags all over the place for me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh boy, we're going south real quick here, aren't we?
Right.
But yeah, she basically, and it was so bizarre to watch some of the videos because she told them that she was having these episodes where the devil was taking over her body, and it almost was like she was like having a seizure or something. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like horror movies where they do like an exorcism, but it was like that she would like was taken over, and they totally bought into it. They were like, this is real. And I don't know if I can say whether she was faking it or not. Like, it's possible she thought it was real too, but I think there was some mental health stuff going on there.
100%. I'm gonna say she was faking it. That's very kind of you to, give benefit of that. No, she was faking it. I think she knew exactly what she was doing, and it was a manipulation. Because that's something I think about too. As like, so I grew up charismatic. I'm not necessarily charismatic Protestant Christian, however you want to say it. I definitely am charismatic cautious now. But so I think sometimes when you have like this religious background and you kind of know that these things are possible, because I do believe people can be possessed. I don't believe that you can be a Christian and be possessed. The Bible actually says differently. And so I feel like when you are predisposed to like believing that type of stuff, sometimes you do end up kind of like going along with things like that. So I definitely think that they believed her. So I also am wondering what the kids were thinking, because like if for whatever reason, I move my therapist or a therapist to my child and a marriage counselor into my home. Okay, that for whatever reason, I have done that. If they start acting demon possessed or blah blah blah, I would even away from my children. She had 6 children at the time. I would get her far away from my children. So I'm curious what all of the children were thinking at that, because the videos, you guys, you should watch the documentary. The videos are insane. Like, it does look like she's copying a movie, honestly.
Yeah. It's very, very, very strange. And I think that Ruby and Kevin genuinely thought, like, she needs our help. Yeah. Like, we're the only ones who can help her stop this. And yeah, it's interesting that you say, like, you wonder what the kids were thinking, because it sounded to me like the younger kids were kind of just like, oh, that's just Jodie. You know, she's close with my parents. Like, we love
Yeah.
having her here, you know? But the oldest daughter, Sherry, was skeptical of all of this stuff from the
Yeah.
beginning. I mean, she was the oldest, so she probably had a little more life experience at the time that things started going south for this family than the other kids did, which I totally get.
Right.
But yeah, she was a skeptic from the beginning, and it's very interesting to hear her perspective on all of the things that were going on.
Yeah.
It's in the documentary. Again, highly recommend it. It was very entertaining to watch, and I really learned a lot.
And she wrote a book. I haven't read it, but it's on my list to read.
I would be interested to read her book too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jodie's episodes of being taken over or whatever she was trying to say was happening got so bad, and she kind of convinced Ruby that they were better when she was around a friend. So Ruby actually ended up moving into the same room as Jodie and like sleeping there with her to prevent these episodes from happening. And this is where my red flag radar was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, right. Like red flag number 5. Okay.
Yeah.
You're only good when you're in bed next to me. All right.
Yeah. And they sort of touched on, like, Sherry said that she didn't really know whether they were having a sexual relationship or any kind of like physical romantic relationship or not. But she said, like, it was definitely weird and like crossing boundaries for sure. I mean, obviously.
Well, I mean, that coupled with her very obvious hate for men just feels, I hate to like, speculate someone's sexuality. I don't like doing that, but like, it just feels it fits right neatly into a certain box.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, of course we're gonna like have that thought.
Yeah,
Maybe they
like
were involved in some capacity. Who knows?
right. 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
You know.
I don't know for sure, but
Right.
So then the next thing that happened was Ruby convinced her husband that he had to move out of the home.
Red flag number 6. Woo, woo, woo.
Yep, exactly. Like they're just popping up all over the place. But she basically framed it as he needed to move out in order to save their marriage. And he did it.
And that goes back to what we were saying and what you pointed out. And I hadn't even thought about it, but you pointed it out. He put her on such a pedestal that he's willing to do something so insane. So insane.
Yeah. And she wouldn't let him talk to any of the kids. And he
that's so crazy.
It's so bizarre to me because he just went along with everything she said, even though like he's from this seemingly good, wholesome, tight-knit family, and he was so easily able to just cut off his entire family, essentially.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, and in the documentary, this was the strangest part to me. He still talked about her with such love. Like, he was frustrated about what happened, and he was disappointed how things turned out, but he's still, like, the kids still having love for their mom. You can't help that. Like, there are stories of parents abusing their mom, or moms abusing their children, and their kids still wanting the love. It's an innate thing you can't help. Your spouse abusing your kids, and you still kind of like, yeah, and she made bad decisions. Like, what? He's so weird.
I know. They talked to him a lot throughout the documentary. I'm honestly so surprised at how open he was throughout the documentary.
Me too.
I mean, he even turned over video footage that like was never supposed to see the light of day of her recording herself for her family vlog channel and yelling at the kids, telling them like you're not entitled to speak while I'm recording is one that stuck with me. Or there was one that she was filming with the older son, Chad, where he was clearly upset, didn't want to film, and she basically was like, okay, well, you need to fake it for the camera. We need to film and we need to post, and you need to put on a smile and fake it for the camera. And I was like, that is so messed up. This poor kid was like 12. I'm like, let him be a kid. Kids have emotions.
Yeah, it was so messed up. And I'm also wondering, like, did Kevin think he would come out as like the good guy in this? Like, why are you doing this?
I don't know because I was kind of kept waiting to feel bad for him or something throughout the documentary, and I just never really did.
Yeah, me either. I just don't get. I guess.
If I'm gonna really, really, really play devil's advocate, I think he was also brainwashed by Jodie.
Yeah,
I do. Like, I think he genuinely bought into the things that she was trying to sell. to their
Yeah.
family. Obviously don't know what that's like. I've never been brainwashed in a
Yeah.
cult, any of that. But and honestly, I think their oldest son, Chad, was brainwashed too, because he was
Yeah.
sort of on board with all of this
Yeah.
until he wasn't, you know?
Right.
Anyways, sorry I got sidetracked there. But he moved out of the home, didn't have any contact with basically the whole family for a year. Which I'm like, what kind of man can just walk away from 6 kids and his wife
And
for a year?
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's stuff like
Yeah,
that. I'm like, I have such low sympathy for him. Because
I
even if he's
know.
brainwashed, like, your innate fatherlyhoodness, or whatever you want to call it, should have been like, okay, I can't do this. My kids, not my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically after that happened, I mean, Jodie basically had Ruby to herself, which I think was her goal all along.
Mhm.
I don't know what her sort of hyperfixation on Ruby was, if it was her status from her
Mental illness.
internet fame or what it was, but she just like was really drawn to her and wanted her to herself is what it seemed like
Yeah,
to me.
100%.
And this is when things got out of control. Like her teachings just kind of took over, and they started spending all this time together, and they were spending time at, what was the name of the city? Jodie owned this like beautiful huge home in Ivins, Utah, which I searched on Google Maps, and it's about like just under 4 hours away from Springville, where the Frankie's
Oh, I
family
didn't
home
realize
was.
that.
So yeah, I know, I didn't realize it was so far, but I was like, why were they spending so much time out there? Maybe, I don't know, it's probably smaller, like more private, less chance of
Yeah.
getting caught doing sketchy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they were spending more time out there. And they were bringing the kids with them, obviously. Well, at this point, Chad and Sherry were both adults and they were out of the house. So it was the youngest 4 children who remain anonymous throughout the documentary. They're just referred to as the children. Their faces are blurred throughout it. So I'm not going to say any of their names.
Yeah.
So then it all came to a head on August 30th, 2023, when Ruby Franke and Jodie Hildebrandt were both arrested at the home in Ivins, Utah. So what happened was the son, they had 2 sons and 4 daughters. So there's the oldest son, Chad. That's not the son I'm talking about right now. It's the youngest son. He escaped from the house and went to a neighbor and basically asked them to call the police because things had gotten so bad. And he was described as extremely emaciated and had open wounds on his arms and legs from being duct taped. He told them that he escaped through a window and he was begging them for food and water. So these neighbors are like obviously freaked out. So they call the police and they tell them where the kid came from, and the police go there and they arrest Jodie and Ruby. When they searched the home, they found all sorts of stuff. They basically found evidence of everything that they had been doing, and these children were very severely abused in that home. They found rope. They found a paste made of honey and cayenne in like a bucket that they were rubbing on wounds, apparently. And the most interesting piece of evidence they found was Ruby had kept a journal of everything that she made these children do. She withheld food and water from them. She forced them to exercise. She tied them up, rubbed the honey cayenne paste that she had made on them. It outlined pretty much every horrible thing that she did to these kids. And it was all in the name of driving the devil out of them, basically. Like, they were exhibiting signs of evil, so she thought. And she thought the only way to, like, get the evil out of them was by doing these terribly abusive things.
Awful. It's so awful. Just really quick, I want to say it's just so awful. Thinking about like all that they've gone through, and then I think it does like Ruby was so far gone, had such mental illness that she would even sit there and like write it all down. That's what's so crazy too. Like, they don't even have to speculate. They don't have to really have a real trial because I mean, Your Honor, here it is right here. It's just and
Right.
it's just so sad. Like the video, they show the video. They don't show the kid's face, but they show him knocking on the door and um the 911 call, and the older gentleman, like, he gets choked up on the 911 call because of just how like sad and awful the son looks. I mean, he's starving, he has these cuts and rope, and it's so sad. So sad.
Yeah. And one thing I probably should have mentioned earlier is that her sort of weird parenting styles, I don't even feel right calling it that, but her abusive tendencies were escalating this whole time. And she was still posting on the channel about it. And people on the internet were starting petitions. That's the word I was looking for. Like signing, trying to get child services involved because they were so concerned about the things that she was saying on her channel and the well-being of these kids. And there were a couple neighbors they talked to at their home in Springville who had also expressed concern about the children. Child services even got involved at one point, but they basically didn't have enough evidence to do anything. This is something that had been kind of brewing for a while, sort of like in broad daylight almost, which is so crazy. It seems like they were kind of shut in their house, but she was still posting on the channel, and like eventually the kids just kind of stopped playing outside, it sounded like, and then they isolated themselves at this house in Ivins, and it all just really got out of hand.
Yeah.
So they were arrested. Ruby was charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. And on December 18th, 2023, she pled guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. She was sentenced and will serve up to 30 years in prison. And that is where she is right now.
So that's the story of an abridged story of Ruby Franke and, you know, an addendum for Jodie Hildebrandt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more detail in the documentary. I really recommend it. It's very good. It's on Hulu.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in the story, check that out.
Yeah, I'll link that, and then I listen to a couple podcasts. I'll also link that for you guys as well. Okay, let's do our life lessons. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. The life lesson, basically what I wrote down, is use critical thinking and question everything. If something doesn't feel right, then you should really dig into that. You know, if you're talking to this therapist and they're telling you all this crazy stuff and you're not so sure if you're on board or not, like, I think you should go deeper on that, you know? Like, always be asking yourself, am I doing what's good? Am I doing what's right? Because I think that if that had been utilized a little more in this situation, it never would have gotten to the place that it got.
Yeah. There were many times where they could have been like, you know what, this isn't right, and like reverse course. Yeah. So my life lesson is beware of cults and people who are like trying to control you. So when I say for those that don't know, I have a little stand here. So if you see me looking away, that's what I'm looking at. So when I say cults, cults of Christianity are like so Jodie, for example, Jodie started a cult. It is when someone takes something, they get this special knowledge or something like that, and it seems so close to the truth. You know, she was saying things that Mormons believe. She was a Mormon herself. She was doing all the things that she thought, she was saying all this stuff. But then there were tiny things that were just like different from the truth, like different from what they believe. And I think it's important to beware of stuff like that. You know, we're Christians, so I'll say for Christians, like when we're reading the Bible, if you meet someone who's starting even a Bible study, I mean, we see this all the time. If you meet someone that's starting a Bible study and you're excited, you're going, and then all of a sudden you hear them and they say something like, well, I got this special revelation from God that blah, blah, or, you know, we should remain sexually pure from, I'll just use this. This is an egregious, like this is going to be super obvious, but like, this is what I'm trying to say. You should abstain from sex for marriage, except for me. Like, and obviously we know, like we see that we're like, okay, wait a minute. He's saying we should abstain. Okay, that's in the Bible. Now he's saying it, except for him. Obviously we know that's not right, but I think you have to know that you have to be right up in your Bible. You have to know these things. You have to, you know, Abby and I have similar in the sense of like what she said was right. You have to like use discernment. You know, if this doesn't sound right, then maybe it's not right. Do a little bit more research on it, especially following like one person. I think that's like something that, because I think we all just want to be a part of something bigger than us. And I think, I mean, even like with the Jamestown, you know, I think of Jamestown, like he was saying great things. I listened to someone talk about it on the podcast. If what had happened hadn't happened, he probably would have been like a civil rights leader. He was just, you know, listening to some of his talkings before, you know, he went off the trails. Great, saying great things. And we all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. But if we're going to say we're Christian, if you're Muslim or something else, you're going to say all these things, you need to make sure that you're like in what the word says. Like, what is it in there? And then like, if it strays, pay attention to that and like run, don't walk. And if you get that little if there's a big red flag, don't, you know, try to make it pink or try to make it yellow, just be like, okay, this is a red flag, and run away.
Right. I think too, it's important to keep a good community of people that you trust around you.
Yeah.
Because I think that if Ruby had some friends or other people that she was close with who were kind of practicing their religion a little more properly and like saw this going on, they could kind of step in and be like, hey, what are you doing? This isn't you.
Yeah.
Like, why are you isolating with this random woman who's telling you all this crazy stuff?
Yeah, wait,
I
that's
think having good, faithful friends to keep you accountable is just priceless.
100%. And that's such a good point, because in the documentary, even everyone in her neighborhood said, no, she kind of kept to herself. So they couldn't even find people who were like, yeah, Ruby was my girl. I can't believe this happened. It was everybody that they found was like, yeah, no, Ruby was kind of weird. Yeah, Ruby kind of kept to herself. So you're so right. Finding a good Christian community, or, whatever community, finding that and like holding on to that, I think is really, really important.
Definitely.
But yeah, well, you guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something. Hope you learned something from Abby's Law Fact, from our life lessons, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will link the documentary and all that stuff we talked about in probably on a blog post, and then link that blog post in the show notes. Let us know your thoughts. Had you heard the story before? How do you feel about family vlogging? Do you think it's something that we should keep up? What do you think about the law? Just comment, whatever, however you're listening. Abby, is there anything you want to say?
Just thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
I'm super excited to have you back too. And we're going to be more consistent with these. It's so funny, just a side note, like we're in some Facebook groups and people are always talking about, we need more true crime. And I'm like, okay, we got to just be consistent. So we'll be more consistent with these. I'm trying to do like 2 a month or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, you guys, thank you so much for listening, and have a good day, night, evening, however, wherever you're listening.
Bye.